what your choice of AFL team says about you. The West Coast Eagles, like the guy with the massive softie that hasn't been able to get it up for a while, you are coasting on your reputation alone. Alas, no matter how many times you show off the pedigree of that now dormant hog, it won't get any heads turning. The Fremantle Dockers, you are an expert at managing your expectations. A fringe success-dwelling creature that has had its heart broken enough to have serious trust issues. This is your bust state. Your boom state is when Freo wins one game and you decide to get Flagmantle branded onto your face. Collingwood Magpies, your good manner and award-winning smile has made you an absolute pleasure to be seated near during a game of footy. You're the sort of defendant a lawyer would be proud to represent because you're seriously in form. You've snorted up a big, fat line of degoe and you'll barely sleep until the grand final. Melbourne Demons, you went to one of Melbourne's elite private schools and lowballed a seasonal worker on a payout claim after crippling them in a coke-fueled ski fields incident. You enjoy watching the game from the safety of your MCC segregation and would need several years of therapy to deal with meeting a real footy fan. Port Adelaide Power, you have several restraining orders against amateur league footy umpires and would headbutt your own mother to get to the Oval's bar. You were the biggest threat to the success of Gather Round and will be for many years to come. You are a pie floater in the toilet bowl of AFL. Adelaide Crows, the West Coast supporter of Middle Australia. Like an Aldebrand elitist, you are torn between vindication that you aren't port scum and a delusion you can sip chardy with the likes of Melbourne fans. Brisbane Lions, deep down you know it's shameful to be a Queenslander and you bravely went against the grain and supported AFL in a state clearly hostile towards it. You don't take it personally when other fans can't be bothered going to Brisbane to watch the games. The Saints Flagmantle merely adopted the disappointment. You were born in it, molded by it. You didn't see the light until you were already a fan, and by then it was nothing to you but blinding false hope. Western Bulldogs, you know how to party. The kind of fan you could have a beer with but would certainly triple wrap your peen if you wanted to delve deeper into their sweaty, moist supporter pit. You're like the Hepper from a rusty shank of the Victorian scene, not great but there is worse hepatitis to catch. Geelong, what happens in the barn stays in the barn, right? If your hands are gripping a tractor's steering wheel, they are latched onto your second cousin's pigtails while you cheer on an age-defying team who are only starting to slow down. You'd get married at the catery if you could. Carlton Blues, like an overfilled ravioli, your set of blue baggers have been blue with frustration for many years. You wish you could look at your great Nonna and Nonna OS faces after they realized they had made the sacrifice of migrating to Australia just so their family could act like they won a flag every time they steamrolled a bottom 8 team. Essendon Bombers, a villainous fan base that has never mentally recovered from the events of the Great Drug Purge. Everyone is against you and you'd have 10 more premierships if it wasn't for the bungling of the investigation. You have a pretty cruisy job in middle management in a business that involves a warehouse. Gold Coast Suns, like a rogue panther in a hick town, there are legends you exist yet no one has ever really seen you in the wild. It's hard to blame you for not being fanatical because if you wanted to watch contact sport you could go and watch the steroid apes at Surfers Paradise fight over some wayward eye contact. Richmond, you have probably been a staunch member since about 2017. You'll get aggressive if you're accused of bandwagoning though and will have a deeply held belief that Richmond owns the AFL due to the history and the G. If it was up to you, you'd bring back the VFL in a heartbeat. Sydney Swans, you relish being the thorn in the VFL's side. Although, if you're honest, you're a fair weather fuck and see going to the games as more of a social event. A chance to mouse up that quaff and lose interest as soon as the boys start losing. 75% chance you have a social coke addiction. Greater Western Sydney Giants can only presume you are being held in Western Sydney against your will. Perhaps you moved there for work and were dragged out by AFL officials every 2 weeks to join the other 8 fans to fill out that stadium. Please wink twice if you need help. North Melbourne Kangaroos, like the golden child that found himself in a life of degeneracy and crime. You have fallen far and are beginning to wonder if you'll ever get your shit together. Nevertheless, you'll rock up to the family gathering each year dragging your feet and muttering that you'll cut someone if they try to merge your team. Hawthorn Hawks, much like the Liberals, the only success you have is in Tasmania. You enjoy sleeping on a pile of franking credits to the cretinous musings of your Lord and Saviour Jeff Kennett. You hate to say it but your mother is slowly coming to look like Dermy with all those Botox injections.